Hey everyone, welcome back to the Parenting Lab. Let's get right into it today. I use words all the time in my coaching that just repeat themselves. Sometimes it's just because clients are bringing up the same things. Sometimes it's what's on my mind. And lately, I've been thinking and talking a lot about the word witnessing. So it keeps coming up, and I want to share a few thoughts about that with you today. So to start with, witnessing someone is more than noticing them. It's more than listening to what they have to say or paying attention to what it is that they're going through. It's a way of truly seeing them, not just what they're doing, what they're feeling, but who they are within all of that, like who they are at their very core. And I'm starting to wonder if this is something that we are losing the ability to do in our culture and society, because in many ways, we're more visible than we've ever been. We share pictures of our families, updates about our lives, our vacations, our jobs, sometimes what we're struggling with. People know what we made for dinner and how our kids' sports teams are doing and what we think about almost everything. But here's the thing, and this is the issue that keeps coming up with my clients. Being visible is not the same as being seen, okay? We can share these pieces of our lives with hundreds of people that follow us, or even with the one person that matters most to us, and yet we still feel like no one really knows us. We can receive the likes and comments, we get advice and encouragement, we even can get like hugs and reassurance, and we can still walk away from those interactions feeling alone, because people are seeing what's happening without really knowing or making an effort to see what those things really mean. And this isn't just a social media problem. It's happening in our families and in our closest relationships too. We can live in the same house, manage the same schedules, raise the same kids, and talk every day without feeling deeply known by the other person. We can have good friends who know the details of our lives, but they don't really know what's going on or how we're actually doing. Sometimes we don't even know how to show them. We've become very good at offering up a version of ourselves that feels easiest for other people to receive. It's the capable version, the fun version, the helpful version. It's the version that says, I'm fine, it's just been a busy week. And while that version might be real, it also may not be the whole truth. So we can be surrounded by people who love us, and still we wonder, does anyone really see me? Not just the role I play for them, not just what I accomplish or contribute, and not just the parts of me that are easy to love or explain. Who sees me underneath all of that? So many people feel lonely in their partnerships and in their parenting. And I think some of that loneliness comes from moving through our lives without feeling truly seen. People that truly see us can remind us of things that we have forgotten about ourselves. They see growth that we don't recognize because it's happening in such small increments. And sometimes they're able to hold the truth of who we are, even when we can't see it for ourselves. And that is the power of witnessing. So what does it mean to actually witness someone? Typically, when we think of a witness, it's someone that is observing an event or that can give a firsthand account of what happened, right? Someone who was there and saw it happen. But relational witnessing is about more than just observation. We can watch someone without witnessing them. We can notice that our child slammed the door, or that our partner's been unusually quiet, or that a friend hasn't seemed maybe like herself lately. We can observe behavior and recognize differences. We can also listen without fully witnessing. We can hear every word someone says while in our minds, we're preparing what we're going to say, or we're thinking of solutions or deciding whether we agree or disagree, or we compare their experience to one of our own to make it more relatable. Listening matters, and paying attention matters, but witnessing goes deeper than that. Paying attention says, I noticed. Listening says, I heard you, but witnessing says, I see what this means to you, and I see you. In relationship research, this is referred to as responsiveness. It's that feeling that someone understands us and cares about our experiences and recognizes the parts of us that matter the most. And research consistently connects that feeling of responsiveness with intimacy and security and well-being. So basically, being witnessed isn't just emotionally comforting, it's actually what helps create the safety we need for our relationships to deepen and get stronger. Witnessing doesn't mean we have to feel exactly what they feel or agree with every decision that they make, and it's not endorsement of those decisions. It's simply the willingness to recognize that other people's experiences are real. We're not rushing to explain why they shouldn't feel that way, and we're not telling them to look on the bright side. We're not immediately pointing out what they could have done differently and offering lists of what they should try next. We're really just allowing the truth of the moment to exist long enough for that person to feel met inside of it. So it's less about finding the perfect response and more about what we are bringing into the moment. Am I curious about this person's experience? Can I stay present even if I don't know how to make it better? Can I let this moment belong to them without turning it into a story about me? Can I resist deciding who they are based only on what I'm seeing right now? Right? A witness can acknowledge the struggle without allowing that struggle to become that person's identity. They can say, I see you're struggling, but I don't only see your struggle. I see the mistake you made, but I don't believe that mistake tells me everything I need to know about you. I see that you're unsure of yourself right now, and I also remember strength I've seen in you before. That is where witnessing becomes different from validation, for instance. Validation acknowledges that someone's feelings make sense. Witnessing holds that experience in the larger picture of who they are, that larger truth. And sometimes it means holding an even broader view, which allows us to notice things that the other person can't see yet. So a friend might recognize that what we think is failure is actually the beginning of change. Or maybe a partner could notice how much courage it takes for us to say something out loud when we might not think that that's significant. Or a parent might see that a child who is acting defiant is probably overwhelmed or embarrassed, or there's something underneath that behavior. This doesn't mean that we invent a more flattering version of that person or that we refuse to see what's really there. Witnessing is like acting as a mirror, and a clear mirror has to be honest. But here's the thing. Honesty without humanity can become judgment, but humanity without honesty can become ignorance. So witnessing, being that mirror, holds both honesty and humanity. It allows us to say, this matters, and so do you. You may not recognize yourself in this season, but I still recognize you. Okay, that's what it means to truly see someone. So if witnessing is this powerful, why is it so hard? I think part of the reason is that most of us have learned to respond to people instead of just being with them. So when someone shares something painful, we are searching for the right thing to say. We offer advice, reassurance, new perspectives. We tell them what worked for us. We try to make them feel better because sometimes I wonder if it's their discomfort that's creating discomfort in us. Now, usually these responses come from love, but sometimes our attempts to help move us away from what that person is really trying to share. So we say, you don't need to feel guilty, before we really understand the guilt. We say, everything will be okay, before we make room for the truth that things might not feel okay right now. True witnessing asks us to resist that urgency to step in. It asks us to stay in those moments that might be uncomfortable without forcing a solution. And that can feel unfamiliar because many of us have learned that love means helping and protecting and teaching and making things better. But our presence has value even when we're not fixing anything. Sometimes the most loving response is actually, tell me more. Sometimes there isn't anything to solve yet. There's simply something that needs to be seen. So this becomes especially important in parenting because parents spend a lot of time watching their children. We watch behavior, friendships, we watch their grades, their moods, their choices, progress. We notice what needs attention, what needs changing, and then what might become a problem down the road. But watching our kids is not the same as witnessing them. When we're focused on managing behavior, it can be so easy to miss the person that's underneath it. We see that slammed door, but we don't see the frustration that came before it. We hear the disrespectful response, but not the fear or the overwhelm underneath it. We notice them pulling away without getting really curious about why that sense of closeness feels hard for them. Witnessing is asking us to look beyond what our children are doing and become curious about what they're actually experiencing. Again, that doesn't mean overlooking harmful behavior or removing boundaries. It means that one difficult moment doesn't become the whole story of who they are or who they're becoming. We can say, what you did wasn't okay, but I know this isn't who you are. Or, you seem really angry. I wonder if something else is going on. Our kids will have times when shame and failure and rejection or uncertainty distorts the way they see themselves, like the mirrors in a funhouse. And in those moments, it's really an opportunity to reflect that bigger truth back to them while still helping them take responsibility and grow and repair. All right, we need to be, as parents, the mirror that is reflecting truth, not distortions. Sometimes kids need someone who sees more than what they did. They need someone who sees them. But learning to witness others, and here's another layer to it, learning to witness others also asks us to witness ourselves. Now, a lot of us don't even really know how to meet our own experiences with curiosity. We meet them with judgment. We tell ourselves we shouldn't be this upset. We dismiss what hurts because someone else has it worse. We criticize our reactions. We minimize our needs. We try to become different versions of ourselves before acknowledging who and where we actually are. Self-witnessing begins with telling ourselves the truth. All right. So that might sound like, that hurt me. I am more overwhelmed than I've let on. This matters to me, or I didn't show up the way I wanted to. We can take responsibility without reducing ourselves to what we did wrong. We can recognize that we are struggling without deciding that we're failing. We can admit that we may have lost our way, but we haven't lost who we are. And this is an important difference. Wanting to be seen is not the same as allowing ourselves to be seen. A lot of us, most of us, want to feel deeply known by other people. We want someone to understand what we're carrying and recognize what we need and remind us of who we are when we lose sight of it. But at the same time, we might only be showing people those parts of ourselves that feel safe. We offer the capable version, the easygoing version, the version that's already made sense of the story and can tell it without becoming emotional. Then we sit here wondering why no one notices how much we're struggling. Sometimes we're just waiting for someone to see what's actually going on, but we're working really hard to hide that at the same time. So to be witnessed, we have to give the other person something true to witness. So that might mean saying to another person, I know I seem okay, but I'm not. Or I don't need advice right now. I just need somewhere to say this out loud. Or I'm afraid that you'll see me differently if I tell you the truth. Allowing ourselves to be seen requires vulnerability, but it also requires discernment. Not everyone has earned access to every part of us. Being witnessed doesn't mean making ourselves completely available to anyone who asks. It means recognizing the people who have shown that they can meet our truth with honesty and curiosity. People that don't rush to judge us or rescue us. Those people who can hold what we share without using it against us. People who can see the parts we're still making sense of without deciding that those parts are all of who we are. So it's not just about who sees me. It's also who have I allowed to see me? Because being deeply known is more than finding the right people. It also requires the courage to let ourselves be known. Now, shame tells us that if people knew the whole truth, maybe what we've done or what we really feel or what we're afraid of, they might withdraw their love or judge us or betray us. And it's interesting because there's actually studies that suggest that simply telling truth isn't what heals or relieves us. It's actually the response that matters. So when honesty or full disclosure is met with judgment or dismissal, then our shame can actually deepen, even though we've said out loud what we didn't want to say. So what happens when we're genuinely witnessed? When we tell the truth and they stay, shame loses its authority. The thing we believed that made us unworthy of connection is now the thing that's being held within connection. It might still be painful, but it doesn't have to stay hidden to protect our sense of belonging. Sometimes when we disclose ourselves or our struggles this openly, the other person can even help us see what we're too close to recognize. So they might say something like, "You keep calling this a weakness, but I see how hard you've been trying." Or "You say you haven't changed, but I remember who you were when this whole thing started." Or "I don't think you're lost. I just think the life that you're living doesn't fit any longer with who you're becoming." All right? A good witness doesn't tell us who we are. They reflect back what is already there. Sometimes the healing begins when that other person sees us clearly enough that we can just borrow their perspective for a while. And little by little, through their reflection, we begin to recognize ourselves again. Often the people that reflect us the most clearly are the friends who have known us the longest or in the different seasons of our lives. Our closest friends carry pieces of our story that we sometimes forget. They remember who we were before parenthood changed us, before the loss or the move, or before the difficult relationship, or before we became responsible for everyone else. And sometimes they're the people who are new to our lives, the ones who have no preconceptions and only know the person that we are today, the person that we've worked so hard to become. These friends know what makes us come alive. They notice the strengths we've dismissed because those strengths feel so ordinary to us. They can see how much we've changed because they remember where we began and they believe so fiercely in our dreams. In that way, the people who love us can become our mirrors. Not mirrors that tell us what we want to hear, but those honest ones that we've talked about. The kind that show us where we've disappeared, where we might be repeating old patterns, and where we're becoming someone new. But even close friendships don't automatically become witnessing relationships. We can spend years talking about kids and schedules and work and everything that's happening around us without ever really talking about what's going on. Sometimes we need more than friendship. We need the intention and the language and the space to see each other more clearly. In my coaching practice, I've been searching for a way to not only be that kind of witness for the people that I work with, but also to create spaces where people can truly be seen by others. And it wasn't until recently that I realized that I don't need to create those circles for you. You already have them. Sometimes we don't need strangers to tell us who we should become. We just need to allow the people who already know and love us to help us remember who we are. That's where kindred came from. And I can tell you that it's already been so impactful for the people who are participating. Essentially, you bring your closest circle of friends, and I guide you through a really beautiful process of reflection and connection and really remembering who you are within the journey that you're on. And you get to see yourself through the eyes of the people who already love you and know you the best. That's what witnessing really is, and how truly seeing and being seen by others can have such a huge impact on our lives and our happiness and our sense of belonging. So to close, I want to leave you with a few questions you can think about this week. First and foremost, who are your witnesses? Who sees you the most clearly? Who knows not just what's happening in your life, but what it actually means to you? And second, who might need that kind of witnessing presence from you? Maybe it's your child who needs to know that you still see them through their behavior. Maybe it's your partner who's been trying to communicate something that you've been resisting somehow. Maybe it's a friend who doesn't need advice as much as she just needs someone who's willing to stay with her in the moment. Or maybe it's you. Maybe there's a part of your own experience that has been waiting for you to stop dismissing or judging or hiding. Remember, to witness someone is to see the person within the experience. It's to be the mirror that can reflect the truth with honesty and humanity. And sometimes it's to remember who they are until they can remember for themselves. We all need people who can do that for us. And we all have the power to become that kind of person for someone else. To find out more about Kindred, the coaching program I was talking about earlier, visit theparentinglab.org/kindred and start gathering your circle. I would love for you to join in that experience and to join in that with you. It really is like a girls' night out, but like next level. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all again next week, where we'll continue to explore the art and science of parenting and put your parenting to the test. Take care.